Good morning. Welcome to the continuation of the Board of Supervisors meeting. At this time, Madam Clerk.
Item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, Personnel Matter, conference with Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding Deputy Sheriff's Association, Sheriff's Management Unit, Service Employees International Union, and Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association negotiations. Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Okay. At this time, public comment? Seeing no public comment, folks, we'll adjourn to closed session. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is a continuation of our study session that was held last Tuesday night. We're going to address one item that's on the agenda, but before we do that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, is there any announcements by the board? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
So the report out from this morning's closed session. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, Personnel Matter, conference with Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding Deputy Sheriff's Association, Sheriff's Management Unit, Service Employees International Union, and Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association negotiations. There was no reportable action taken. Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. No reportable action was taken.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, would you announce public comment, please?
I will. Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start public comments, I want to make sure that everybody is aware of some procedures we have here. Number one, during public comment, in fact, during the entire meeting, I request that everybody be recognized the respect of the chamber, respect of the board, and respect of the people here and in our county. And what I mean by respect is give these folks the respect they deserve, all in one. We have some people I understand in the foyer, and I want to make sure that that operation, they can hear and monitor us. If you can't, please let us know.
We hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have our public comment, then we'll go to the agenda item, and then we'll go to a discussion by the board. And we will be taking a break after public comment to give our clerk a chance to catch her breath and some of our employees. So we'll kind of put that down on your schedule. With that, we'll start public comment, and once again, Thank you. No more than 5 people. As one speaks, we can have those 5 people standing in the back in line, but we'll kind of get up and fill the hole.
Do you want people to sign in?
I'm sorry.
Huh? I almost never signed in, but I just noticed there's nothing laying there. Marty Crane, Rancho Calaveras. I just wanted to bring up something that has bothered me for quite some time, and it has to do with process, protecting our democracy, and protecting and encouraging civic engagement. From time to time, over the years, and recently, of course, there's been one board member that would say, not the same one, but one board member that would say, you know, I wasn't sure, this time it was Supervisor Garamendi, last time it was, I think, well, I want to say kudos to Gary Tofinelli because he reviewed a prior budget hearing before going into the next year's budget hearing. And I think that's an appropriate thing to do. Good for you. And, but this time, as has happened in the past, this time Supervisor Garamendi said, you know, in talking about this, study session, what it would be, the structure it would take, and when he said, well, you know, I wasn't quite sure how that last conversation went, so I went back and I reviewed the tapes, the video, and this is how it was presented and determined. And I heard 3 others say, oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. I don't remember it that way. But instead of going back and getting the factual data, we relied on, I don't remember that, and moved forward. And I don't think that we can move forward on all the critically important decisions and processes that we have to go through to protect the voices of the people and the outcome of our decisions if we don't start with the factual data, where we are. And so I think whenever someone brings that up and go, you know what? You don't remember that, but I reviewed it. So just to be safe, our staff has the ability to very quickly bring things up for our review. And I would suggest that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we apparently have it's not working? Okay, we'll go back to hand timing.
We can always rely on time.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vicki Mills, and I will start with my disclaimer that I used at CCWD. Supervisor Mills has absolutely no idea what I'm going to say, nor is he responsible for anything that comes out of my mouth. Okay? I was at the other study session that this is continuing of until the 9:15 break, at which point I left. But I did watch the rest of the study session on TV. And I'm just going to address some things that really wound me up. There was a lot of misinformation given from both sides. People need to fully research what they plan to say and see if the information that was valid a year ago or 6 months ago is still valid, or if there has been some new information that has discounted that previous information. And case in point on that is the UOP study. Now, when that came out, being the numbers person I am, I get extremely excited about numbers, and I knew this was about numbers, and I'm going, oh, yay! I can't wait to get my hands on it. Well, the method that he used was excellent. The conclusions he drew, and I say because the number he started with, the base information of that report was that all applicants were approved. And as you and I know, that did not happen. At that time that report was done, it was running approximately 2/3 getting denied.
30 seconds.
Okay. Another thing that I noticed was the disrespect for, as the chair mentioned, for the chambers, for people speaking, and for members of the board. The audience should not be shouting out questions at the board. If they have something to say, they should have said it in public comment or be quiet. And on that note, I want to compliment Mark Bolger and Trevor, and I'm going to screw up Trevor's last name,
Ms. Mills.
Whitkey.
Ms. Mills, your 3 minutes are up.
I know, for not doing that and talking into the mic. I'm going, and
thank
yes,
you.
I know, he's over there doing time like I usually do to him.
Thank you, Ms. Mills.
I have a handout here that I'd like to pass to the board. I'm not going to be reading it verbatim because of the three.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, please, if you'll cooperate with us, we need to have you speak into the microphones for our TV folks, because when we misdirect and walk away, it goes silent on the recording. So we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to hear what's happening, and we'll give you back your time for that, ma'am.
Thank you. My name's Elaine St. John, and I am the fourth vice chair of the Calaveras Republican Party, and I am politics. I'm going to be reading a resolution that the Calaveras County Republican Party all voted on from Central Committee. It's called Resolution 17-3, Resolution regarding legalization of marijuana. Whereas the Federal Controlled Substance Act classifies marijuana as a Schedule I drug.
Ma'am, I'm going to interrupt you here. I believe that might be on the agendized item.
It is?
It's alternatives, and this appears to be an alternative. I'll give you the opportunity to speak at that time.
Okay.
You'll have 3 minutes. That's not for discussion, folks. This is a alternative from the heading. I haven't read it, and maybe council can chime in on this. Would this be on the agendized item as an alternative?
I would just remind that this is a public comment period for items that are not on the agenda. So if this has to do with cannabis and the item that is going to be discussed, then that would
Later?
be held at the public comment period for the item when we get to that item. This public comment section is for items that are not on the agenda at all.
Okay, I just was confused with the special study because it didn't, wasn't really.
Ma'am, you're not the only one. Yeah, we'll give you your opportunity on the agendized item.
Just a point of clarification, the person that spoke before, they were speaking on marijuana issues, and they were not stopped. Thank you.
Ms. Renke, no, she wasn't. She was speaking on the process. Thank you, sir. And thank you, sir, ma'am. Next speaker?
Good morning. My name's Bonnie Newman. I'm from Double Springs. I initiated a story about our origin a couple of meetings ago, indicating that it's the first county seat of Calaveras. And at that time, we had everything under control. We had our own courthouse, we had our own jail, and we had our own hanging trees. They were all over the place. I live in Calaveras, the county of death. I'm referring to that because of the symbol which represents Calaveras, a symbol of skulls. That's what Calaveras means, skulls. Why are we known as a county of death? Oh, about 150 years ago, we were a bloodthirsty bunch of people from all different parts of the world. We had ethnic groups, Mexicans, Indians, Chinese, Irish, and we all hung together. And if we came upon a stream or a creek bed where another ethnic group might be panning gold, we were known to massacre them. Our streams and creek beds were lined with human skulls, mainly because the animals couldn't carry away the skulls. They could walk away with a rib bone or a leg bone, but they couldn't get the skulls. So we were known as the County of Death, Calaveras. Throughout the years, we have seen ethnic cleansing happening in other parts of the world, but we were known for wiping out whole segments of the population just to get a little bit of money. I'd like to point out that Double Springs was only the county seat for a very short period of time because some ruffians from McCollum Hill came and stole our archives and made off with them. We don't hold grudges. But don't be surprised if one of these nights we don't posse up, come shoot up the town and get our archives and take them back to Double Springs. Then you all have to come down and be on my street with our permission. Calaveras County has been around for a long time, and I hope it to be around a little while longer. And I may have a suggestion on how that might proceed next time I talk. Thank you all.
Thank you. Ruffian.
Bill Wilson, District 1, retired U.S. Air Force Vietnam-era veteran. Gentlemen, I hold you in high regards. I was disappointed last week the way things degenerated. I hope that doesn't happen again. Anyway, I would definitely like to thank you and give you a report. Pull Station Road is now down to maybe 80 or 90 potholes. Thank you. God, thank you. And my car, the suspension really does thank you all.
Thank you, sir. I hope Mr. Clovis heard that.
Good morning. My name is Vince Venezia. Whoops, whoa, is that too loud?
You're good.
Okay, I'm good, okay. Let me start by saying I'm not a grower, so let's clear that up at the beginning. I have lived with my wife in Calaveras County for 37 years. She is the librarian over at Mountain Oak School here in San Andreas, and I had a successful cabinet and woodworking business until the Butte Fire took that away from me. So now I'm kind of happily retired. I guess this is not about alternatives to the grow, so I won't go into that. I just hope in the 37 years I've lived here, I have felt good. It's been a good county. We've had a good life. We've raised our daughter here, and we've felt safe. The things that are happening now make me wonder about the safety. I don't understand. There was an old saying that when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. It seems like there's a real parallel here. I think this man should be given everything he needs to keep this county a safe place. My neighbors, my personal situation is the neighbors that have moved in around me have been very helpful, been very respectful. I realize this is not the case for everybody. So I believe that he needs whatever he needs to do his job correctly and keep this county safe. You know, they say Afghanistan is the longest running U.S. war, and that's not true. The drug war is the longest running U.S. war, and as Afghanistan, it has been a dismal failure. Give him what he needs to make it successful and keep the law-abiding growers, citizens in this county. And the industry is here to stay. We can't deny that. If it doesn't happen this year, it's going to happen next year or the year after. Let's jump on the bandwagon and smartly make the decisions that will help everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Bill McManus. I have some comments to make about the meeting of a week ago. It seems like a lot of the meetings don't run too smoothly. There's a lot of breaks to find out which direction to take. We have to have conferences outside of chambers. Last week, the items were skipped over. It was causing problems with the audience. People were getting upset. There seemed to be an inconsistent way of handling public comment, which caused more confusion and more upset. And I hope that we're better prepared for meetings in the future so we can get through them without all this unnecessary conflict. During the public comment period, and I don't know if it was the general public comment or on a specific item because that was never made clear, the public comment erupted into something similar to a karaoke club. When someone was singing their comments into the record, and it went well over the 3-minute limit, in fact double that, and nothing was said. When other people go 1 second over their 3 minutes, they're told to sit down, they're done. That didn't happen there. Again, the inconsistent management of the meeting causes problems. Finally, something took place that it almost seems like it couldn't possibly happen. After the chair gives his admonition to the people to be respectful, to the board, to citizens, speakers, staff members, and everything else, a member of the audience stood up during public comments and began an inappropriate and vicious personal attack on one of our supervisors. It went on and on and on, with no one admonishing the speaker that it was inappropriate, that it was rude, and that supervisors don't deserve that type of verbal abuse in a meeting. I have apologized to Supervisor Clapp for what happened. I feel a certain amount of responsibility that I didn't stand up and raise a point of order to end that, and it needed to be ended. I was relying on the chairman to do that. It happened so quickly I couldn't respond. So again, I apologize to Supervisor Clapp for not doing what I could to end that horrible scene. And I hope we don't have that experience again. And I would ask the chairman to obey his own regulations and guidelines for the meeting and his admonitions that people need to be respected because they took the time to show up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, James Walker. I'm from Murphy's, Mr. Oliveira's district. I think I just want to bring a little bit of a different perspective today. I've been watching you guys for 2 years now. I've got kids that get off buses on Tuesdays. I usually can't make it, but it's summer, so here I am. I didn't retire, buy a piece of property up here 37 years ago. I was moved up here as a child 37 years ago. I'm 47 years old today. There's kind of a bubble of misreality with the county that seems to just happen here. When you're a laborer, when you're a member of this county, when you're a taxpayer, when you grew up here, graduated from the schools here, you have a little better sense of what's really happening and what's always happened in this county. When I was 10, I started public school here in Calaveras County. Within 1 day, I was brought to the back of the field and I was introduced to the grammar school bar. Whiskey, tobacco, vodka. I never saw any cannabis till I got into Bret Harte, but that was at the height of the federal drug war, 84 to 88. I graduated in 88 from Bret Harte High School. Never did it get stopped. Never did it get cut down. Never did it get short. And there was cannabis available everywhere. A lot of the problems I hear in this room seem to be civil problems, scent, smells, and disputes between neighbors, which, as far as I'm concerned, should be handled in that way with civic disputes and in courts between neighbors. State passed a law. No matter how the vote went in our county, we adhere to this state law, and by 2 million Californians. You guys say the hospitality is our second biggest industry behind cannabis. Well, those people that come here for our hospitality are coming from San Francisco and the places that passed 64. They're confused. Some of this ban work's becoming a little bit of a joke. I see people now at night taking pictures, lighting up in front of the ban signs. This is a fun thing for the people from the Bay Area to do now. And we've given them that opportunity to make further fun of us as a county. They don't understand where we're at. I don't understand where we're at. I want this tax money. I want to see our buses going again. Tired of fleets of buses sitting there rotting, no bus drivers, us parents having to get background checks and TB tests to bring kids to basketball games. For me, this industry puts gas in the tanks, put pencils on their tables, backpacks, everything we need can be got from this, or we can continue to have nothing. I left the county, I came back, and I was embarrassed by our school system from where it was when I was a child. I never had these problems getting around in this county. It's really an embarrassment. We need to fix it.
Thank you, sir.
Joan Wilson, District 1. I'd like to say to Mr. Clapp, I am sorry for your loss. My prayers and my heart go out to you and your brother's family. On another note, there was a gentleman here once before that said something about painted marijuana leaf on a rock at Natural Bridges, and that our youth should not have to look at a picture of a marijuana leaf. I would respectfully request that all of the signs that are for banning or for a ban or a yes on Measure B be removed, because there are more of those cannabis leaves spread around this county than anything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Steve Bristow. I'm a new resident in this county. Bought a home up on Meadowmont on Fairway Drive. Been up here now for 4 months, which means I moved in January in the middle of the storm, just when the furnace decided to get knocked out. I'm here to talk a little bit about the Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff. I was just informed recently that the budget for the Sheriff's Department is going to be cut unless certain measures are taken. I understand that the budget would take 10 positions. Now, the entire Sheriff's Department is about 50, I believe, maybe slightly over that. But that doesn't account that you've got 50 officers or deputies on the streets of Calaveras County. You don't have that. You've actually got about 20, 25, 27, no? Lower? Damn, excuse me. The number's very low. If he has to cut positions, that means that the officers on the street are going to be responding without cover many times. We call that Code 4 from where I came from. My great-grandfather was a police officer. My grandfather was a police officer. My father was a police officer. His uncles were police officers. I'm retired from the Oakland Police Department after 36 years. My wife is retired from the Sheriff's Department. I was not aware that they were going to be cutting positions from a small department when we moved up here 4 months ago. Whatever steps we have or whatever we have to do to increase funding for the Sheriff's Department, I'm in favor of, and I will vote that way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Mr. Oliveira, why do you insist on allowing other people to talk about marijuana and not allow other people to talk about marijuana? If it's for marijuana, people can go on and on like this 47-year-old gentleman did, and we're not allowed to talk about it. I just think that's unfair. The other day, well, about 3 weeks ago, I was watching a hen turkey walking through the tall grass, and she came to the edge where I had weed eated it. And I noticed she was kind of going slow and walking back and forth like this, and it was this special moment when I saw the little ones coming out, and they were so cute. And so then she went back into the tall grass, and something scared her. She didn't fly to get away. She flew to draw the attention away from the danger to her chicks. And I feel that way. I feel that this is the picture that marijuana is doing to our country and our state, and it's destroying our state's reputation with the other states. CalPERS and PERS does not have stocks or retirement investments, and so therefore, why not? Because of the stigma of cigarettes and what it does to your body. And how much worse is marijuana?
Thank you.
My name is Stan Killian. I own a farm there. Well, it's a farm now. It used to be a horse ranch, but it's a farm over in Diamond 20 in Copperopolis. And anyway, I spoke last week, and I agree with you. A lot of people were making slurs at you people there instead of trying to get the problem there of the ban and whatever worked out. Well, I always figured that if you give honey instead of vinegar, you're going to get more reaction. So that's my policy. Well, in saying that, somebody at this council here said something about there's some disgusting people here that's raising this marijuana out here. Well, I'm here to tell you, on my farm, there's no disgusting people. I've served in the, this hat tells it all. I was in Berlin, Germany in a war zone. And I seen a lot of my buddies, because government gave them marijuana to keep their morale down. It was given to them out there. And it did destroy a lot of people. But I never used it in my life. I don't even know what it tastes like. But anyway, I came back, and I've seen a lot of things that's happening in the marijuana field. It's not, I mean, I was in a trucking business. It wasn't the marijuana that was disrupting my workers. It was what, it was other dope that they used it to drink with and whatever. And this is what did it. Okay, in saying all that, I got into this thing because I've seen that the marijuana deal needs control. It needs control, and that's what we got right now. We got control.
30 seconds.
Pardon?
You have 30 seconds left.
Okay, we got control. So we need to keep that control there. And everybody needs to, you guys need to visit these ranches that you're saying that are disgusting. You need to visit them and see how, what's going on there. In 30 minutes, you can't really describe everything to you, but anyway, I hope that all of you look at it there and we get a plan going to where we can.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind everybody again, there is an agendized item, and we want to kind of stay on the agendized item when we go to public comments on that item. There seems to be a very fine line, or a gray area, if you will, but that has to be determined by the chair, which I have a responsibility of doing. I'll try to be consistent, but there are some very gray areas, and we'll try to be fair to everybody. Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, you have time for one more speaker.
One more speaker. We will resume public comment on a general session at the end of our discussion on the agendized item, as in accordance with our policy. Any other speakers?
Good morning. I didn't intend to stand up and speak, but I feel like there needs to be a clarification. Mr. McManus spoke just a few minutes ago about how people were disrespectful from the audience toward the supervisors. And Mr. Oliveira, every time you introduce the opportunity for public speaking, and at the beginning of every meeting, you talk about mutual respect. And I think the display of disrespect that was shown from the supervisor level was really embarrassing and uncalled for. So I'm just trying to remind the supervisors, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but there were comments made which I think were very disrespectful to the public and also to members of the staff of Calaveras County. So I hope you'll remind them when they begin to speak and begin to criticize in a disrespectful way that they should also refrain from that sort of comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a break, then we'll go to the agendized item. We will resume public comment on a general nature after the discussion and that agendized item has been addressed. We'll be taking a break for 15 minutes. Yes, Sheriff, thumbs up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in session. Now, Madam Clerk.
Item 3 is from the Administrative Office to continue a special study session on cannabis cultivation in Calaveras County.
Is there any presentation by staff for this particular item?
The planning department does not have a specific presentation ready to respond to any questions you might have. We're just here to respond to your questions.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, Mr. Mallard. Any comments by the board before we get started? Sheriff, go ahead, please. Okay, we'll take a quick moment, make sure our electronic systems are working. No, we're just, we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to view it and hear it, sir. Okay. Thumbs up. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Sheriff, proceed, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to bring a couple things to your attention. We did a illegal marijuana grow not too long ago, and we came across a substance, a pesticide called Furadan. This is a pesticide that we're having to deal with in our county now that is going to cause a lot of problems. I'm getting my glasses so I can read to you here a little bit about some of the things that we're having to deal with, and some of the things that not only code compliance, but my deputies and environmental health, fish and game, and other entities that may have to deal with this stuff. It says, and this is a MSDS, for those of you who don't know, it's a material safety data sheet. It says, Furadan, poison if is swallowed, may be fatal or harmful as a result of skin or eye contact or by breathing dust. Wear long-sleeve clothing and protective gloves when handling. Wash hands and face before eating or smoking. Bathe at the end of the workday and change clothes daily and wash before reuse. Environmental hazards. This pesticide is toxic to fish, birds, and other wildlife. Birds feeding on treated areas may be killed. Birds killed by Furadan pose a hazard to hawks and other birds of prey. Runoff from treated areas may be hazardous to fish in neighboring areas. The use of Furdan may pose a hazard to the following federally designated endangered threatened species known to be found in certain areas within the named locations. Canadian geese, California counties. Furdan is a chemical which travels, seeps, or leaches through soil and can contaminate groundwater, which may be used as drinking water. Furdan has been found in groundwater as a result of agricultural use. Storage and disposal. Keep out of the reach of children and animals. Store in original containers only. Store in a cool, dry place and avoid excessive heat. Disposal. Completely empty container into application equipment, then dispose of empty bag in a sanitary landfill or by incineration, or if allowed by state and local authorities, by burning. If burned, stay out of the smoke. These are some of the chemicals that my people have to deal with, and again, in code compliance, environmental health. If we don't put something in place to solve this problem and give me and the rest of this county the ability to combat this stuff, we're going to have some serious problems health-wise in our county. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any other staff member wish to present? Okay, then we'll open it. I'm sorry. Ms. Callan, thank you.
Thank you. So I've been over in my office listening and taking copious notes. I wanted to just give a general update from a fiscal standpoint and also make one correction. What I've heard over probably the year that we've been having, 2 years that we've been having active discussions about this, and more so over the last year with the potential of the excise tax, I think there's a public belief that the excise tax that's going to come in is going to somehow make its way to the school districts and the fire districts and CAL FIRE, and the reality is it doesn't. The excise tax is to the county general fund. That's it. If the board were to take some action to have it be allocated outside of the county offices, certainly you have the authority to do that, but at this point, this is a general fund excise tax, okay? I also wanted to give you just an update in terms of revenue that has been collected to date for that excise tax. As of today, it's $1,079,000 is what has been collected. In terms of what has been expended for regulatory costs to date from the inception of expenditures in the program is $2,061,000. 58% of that is on salaries and benefits. In terms of what has been budgeted for the 17-18 fiscal year for regulatory program, I know that there's still discussions with the administrative office. We are estimating probably about $2.5 million is what I'm guessing. Based on the current expenditures and the trends that are going to go through the end of this month, I would guess we're going to have about $1.4 million remaining of the regulatory fees that were collected. So that leaves a gap between the regulatory fees that we have accumulated and spent compared to what's going to be budgeted for next year of $1.1 million. Just kind of to keep the math easy, that means we would need 220 commercial grows approved by June 30th in order to collect that $1.1 million. At this point, I just contacted the planning department. We have 108 approved commercial grows. So if you recall, the application fee gets repaid a year from approval. So we kind of are looking at it on when we're going to get that next application fee. So right now, that's what I'm looking at is about a $1.1 million gap in the regulatory program.
Okay. Supervisor Garamendi, you have a comment or a question?
I have a question. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for giving us these numbers. When we talk about renewing the fees and collecting that, the initial group of approvals, it's 1 year after, so we'll be getting, so when you baked in that mid-June having to have that 220 approved to keep the pump prime, for lack of a better term. That's going to happen incrementally over the year as well, because people will be
happens.
paying in December and on,
Yeah,
right?
so if it was approved in October of 2015 or 2016, then they pay it in October of 2017. So it's always 1 year from when that approval happened. So we're kind of trying to figure out, you know, at what point are we going to get that additional application fee? So in order for us to get an application fee in the 17-18 fiscal year, in order to match the expenditures that we would be, you know, the outlay
Sure.
of those expenditures in 17-18, that approval has to happen by June 30th of this year.
Our expenses, as we look at this, I mean, they don't all happen. It's not an even layout
No.
of expenses,
No.
right? So, you know, we have revenues coming in, and we've got expenses higher in the summer during eradication efforts and other things. So,
Well, it's the regulatory program.
cash
So
flow.
it's depends on what types of activities are happening with that regulatory program, whether it's inspections or abatement or whatever it is. So just depending on when those, you know, when the ebbs and flows of those activities happen.
right, so the 1.1 million,
Well, it's a total of 2.5.
right,
Yeah.
right. So, I mean, it's not that we have a hole, we just have we have a cash flow.
Well, we do, because we only have 108 approved grows as of today, and I
Right.
need 220.
Understood.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Supervisor Mills?
Not so much for Rebecca, I'm sorry to kind of step into the middle of it. Sheriff, there's one thing that you probably knew, but we should let the public know, and that is Furadan has been revoked for use in the United States since December of 2009. It is not a product that is sold in the United States, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted that clear, that these people then are bringing this harmful chemical into California, into Calaveras County from some other country besides us, because we don't sell it here.
Correct.
Okay, and it becomes a hazmat situation for you.
Absolutely, and that's the point I was trying to bring across to the board, that you're putting, and again, these were found on illegal grow sites, that they're bringing this stuff into our county and they're putting our staff at risk.
Any further questions of the board, or by the board? The sheriff or Ms. Callan? Ms. Callan, I have a question. On the regulatory fees collected due to the marijuana applications or cannabis applications, in dealing with the environmental protection violations or that enforcement, is that funded by the application fee of the commercial grows, or is that out of that scope?
If there's environmental, like, fines, is that what you're talking about?
Cleanup, any environmental cleanup, that's not funded by the application fee?
The abatement costs can potentially come out of those regulatory fees.
It does.
It
It's funded
can.
by. It can. Correct?
Yeah, it depends on what the circumstances were for whatever that abatement was.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sorry about that. In regards to environmental cleanup or environmental fines, so whether they be applied by the state or the local jurisdiction, I mean, I've heard from the state that none of the money that they fine people actually comes back to the injured county. My question would be, to what degree are we providing fines for environmental cleanup to recover the costs of those efforts that take place?
That would be a question maybe for council or the district attorney's office. I do know that we have had environmental cases that have had associated fines and penalties, you know, with them, that we have, that have been paid, and we have seen those deposits come through. But it depends on if the district attorney's office, and she's spoken to you about this, you know, at length as well, depending on what the resources are in order to go after those activities. So, I mean, it is happening, but it's kind of separate from the regulatory fee piece. So, okay.
I think I'd like to get a better understanding of how that procedure works. I don't know if we can get our folks from environmental health over here or someone from the district attorney's office maybe they may have some information that applies to this. So I'm going to reserve staff comment until we can get representatives from that department here to speak on that issue. Is that agreeable with you, Ms. Callan?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not an
Thank you.
expert on environmental activities, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time,
Mr. Chair,
I'm
if I
sorry.
could add a little bit to what Ms. Kalaman said as far as the revenue picture and the timing of, she's correct in that the renewal under the urgency ordinance would happen 1 year from the date of the issuance of the registration. So that program will expire once a new ordinance is in place, whether it's a complete ban as currently directed by the board or some other regulatory ordinance. It also would go away without any action as of February of next year, February 14th. So there was a small window there where additional revenue could be taken in by the county for the renewals. If the county were to adopt a different regulatory program, new fees would be available with that new program at the time of new submittal for it's the whole new program. Again, that's a big if because the current direction from the board is we want to ban it. And so that's the current direction that we're working on. But just so the complete picture of how the revenue would come in and the timing of that would be that if a program is adopted that requires new registration, that would be new registration fees collected at that point in time. And then there would be, again, a small window of re-registration application fees coming in for those that were issued between September of last year and middle of February of this year.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. The reason that we're discussing this, I believe, is we're just here to discuss alternatives, but in that discussion, we have to realize funding for any alternatives or for the initial ban ordinance draft that we have. So I feel as chair, it's important that we discover all avenues for funding of those decisions once the board makes those decisions, or we go another procedure, just to qualify what we've done here in the last 10 minutes. Is there any other comment by staff or by the board regarding this issue before I open it to public comment?
I have one comment. I just want to, in case it wasn't totally clear, none of the people whose applications are expiring or that have current registrations or pending applications would be renewing. Whatever urgency ordinance replaces the existing ones automatically terminates the cultivation rights of everyone that has a pending application or an existing registration. So if everyone was going to re-register, there would be, everyone would have to reapply and pay their application fees when that program initiated. So it's not quite the case that you would have to wait a year for renewal of the existing registrants. The program terminates, it ends. And at that point, everyone who reapplied would then pay the registration fees at the initiation of that program. So there wouldn't be a year-long break between the county accepting fees.
Any comment to that issue? Okay, seeing none, we'll open it up to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind we have 3 minutes and you can only speak once.
Could I just ask for some clarification quickly?
Sure, Madam Clerk.
My understanding is that today's continued item is for that portion of the meeting that was not discussed. Do we need to just read into the record what that is?
I'm going to have council comment on that.
The meeting from the 30th was in fact continued for purposes of discussion of alternatives. However, what was agendized for today's meeting was the study session, and the staff report that accompanied it included everything that was discussed at the last meeting as well as what was going to be discussed today as far as alternatives. So as far as the Brown Act is concerned, anything related to any of the items that was discussed last week at the study session, as well as alternatives, would be open for discussion today.
Okay. Any comment by staff on that? Do we have an understanding? Do we have an understanding in the public here, folks? All right, at this time we'll start public comment. Madam Clerk.
Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I have 3 ideas. First, we were asked what would we like to see. What I would like to see is a 3 to 5 year trial run or experiment to determine if cannabis cultivation can save or bail out a small rural county that's on the verge of financial ruin due to a devastating wildfire and other factors. I think give it a chance to see how it works will be the best way to determine whether it's going to be beneficial to the county. I know that California has approved cultivation. I would urge you to accept, embrace, and tax it. Make it work. At the end, we could reevaluate the amount of money generated, and whatever money, I'm not willing to give it all to the sheriff's department. I think some of it should go to home care workers who have not had a pay raise in 7 years. My second alternative would be, since it is legal in California, and counties are allowed to accept or reject it, to allow each district in our county to determine whether they want to accept or reject it. And of course, any money generated in those districts could be used only in those districts. Finally, when the sheriff's department finds an illegal grow, they destroy everything, even the valuable crop. Don't burn it,
Ladies and
auction it
gentlemen,
off.
Excuse me a moment, Bonnie. I'm going to admonish you once, because we're going to be taking some other action. Please show respect to speakers. And this is for everybody in this room, in the foyer, and on this board and our staff. Interrupting them is very rude and disrespectful. You'll have your opportunity to speak at the mic during public comment. Thank you. I apologize, Bonnie.
That's okay. When the county has excess, surplus resources, old vehicles and equipment, they auction it off. I think the valuable crop that is now being destroyed could be used to refinance our shortfalls, to keep programs intact, and to fund programs that are not fully funded at this point. That would be my 3 suggestions. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to think outside the box, because I felt it was important when you said, what would we like to see? That's what I would like to see. A trial run where it's determined whether it's successful or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board
Next.
Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to clarify. It was brought to my attention that a statement was made at the last meeting on the 30th that discussion was going to be limited to the alternatives. Since I was not here, I wasn't aware of that comment. However, under the Brown Act, what is agendized is what is on the topic, which is ultimately fair game for discussion. It is in your discretion. There is a lot of leeway in your discretion. However, under the Brown Act, because of the computer system that just pulls the agenda item from the last week's agenda to this week's agenda, the entire staff report and the entire item was pulled over. So under the Brown Act, the entire staff report, so it would include everything that was discussed at the last meeting, as well as the alternatives, is on today's agenda. So just so this board is aware, under the Brown Act, you can consider and listen to comments and discussion on everything that was discussed at the last meeting, and today there is that flexibility. If you have, because that was stated at the last meeting on the 30th, you do have discretion to solicit input on that, since there was already public comment on the remainder of that agenda item last week. That is in your discretion, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was clear of what the extent of today's item was.
Thank you, Counsel.
Okay.
I'm aware of that. I'm going to take, I'm going to ask you, sir, is this a point of order? All right, then I'm, all right, there you go.
Excuse me, I'm really apologize for this. I don't want to do this, but we understand that we have 3 minutes each to give our opinions of what we think. Do we have a total time frame that we have to, this discussion is going to be? If there's no time frame, then we don't have to worry about jumping up there as fast as we can.
We're going to go as long as we possibly can for everybody to get a chance at public comment.
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Now, I'm going to exercise a little discretion here. I understand we have environmental health, and I'm going to interrupt public comment for a presentation by, or questions to environmental health. Sir, could you approach and identify yourself for us?
Yes, I'm Brad Banner, the agency administrator.
Okay.
And we also have Lisa Medina here, who's the environmental health manager. So between the two of us, we can try to answer any questions.
Hello.
Any questions of them? Supervisor Mills, you got your finger on the button.
Might as well turn it on if the finger's on the button. So regarding this entire issue, when it comes to the cleanup of hazardous material on these eradication sites, to what level are we capable of doing cost recovery on that? And do we have the staff necessary at this point? What level of staffing are we going to need to properly handle it based upon what you see out there now?
Well, I think the remediation will be part of the code enforcement process. What we have seen is we have been, as an agency, looking at the sites as regulators, and we have prioritized the sites where people have come in for pesticide ID through our ag department, and we've found pretty good compliance of the people we've looked at, because we've been looking at those people that have already proactively worked to comply.
Okay.
I guess more to the question is, for those that are not complying, I deferred to Madera County recently deciding that their cost to clean up was about $250 per plant. I don't know that we've actually done any cost studies to determine whether what that number might be.
No.
And so, should that be part of our structural element here, no matter how we discuss this going forward, to know exactly what those costs would be? You're shaking your head, so I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds reasonable.
Thank you.
Supervisor.
Thank you. That is the purpose of the question.
Supervisor Garamendi?
This is just follow-up. Supervisor Mills, in the Madera study, was that total cost of abatement or just for the environmental piece? Was that total cost? So that was the sheriff, planning, everybody coming in? Okay.
So let me turn on my mic. Sorry. So the point is that they have done some type of study to figure out that cost, and I'm just trying to determine whether or not we need to have a full rounded discussion on not just a piece of it, but all of it, including the environmental costs, and to what level we need to do that cleanup within those specific locations, whether it be, whether we call it legal or illegal, whatever it is. If we find it, what is it going to cost us to clean it up? And if we don't know that number, then we're really shooting at a dark horse here to try to figure it out. And I would just assume we know that before we make our decisions.
Thank you, Supervisor Mills. Supervisor Garamendi, any further on that?
No, just looking.
I do have one question. The fines generated by environmental health violations, are those levied by the county or by the state or by both? And where do the proceeds of those fines go? State, or does it come back to the county?
I'm not aware that we've been fining. I don't know.
Not for the Coupa programs, and the cannabis would fall under
I'm
specific.
going to ask you to speak right and loudly into the mic, please.
Yes. Okay. So the question was, where did those funds specifically come from, and how are they allocated?
Correct.
So currently, under the Coupa programs, any fines, which we have not stated any fines, or we haven't processed any fines to date, those would go back to the Coupa program as funding.
Okay, that would fund the program then.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moss, I understand that you would like to address this issue?
Sorry, I would just like
Mr.
to weigh in
Moss
on this.
is our assistant CAO.
And former Brad. And so to answer that question only because I was here for a long time, one of the mechanisms that environmental health uses is a circuit prosecutor program with the district attorney's office. And I don't know if they've used that certainly for this program, but for environmental, what they call environmental crimes, the circuit prosecutor program has been used. Those monies, as I understand it, go to either A, the state, or B, to the DA's office. So that's a separate issue altogether, in addition to what Lisa just stated as well. That's the other avenue. But I just want to clarify about the circuit prosecutor program. So thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Garamendi?
Brian, you should all stay up there. The WCB, which enforces or uses Fish and Game to enforce our environmental laws and water and whatnot, they collect certain fees, penalties based upon what the crime is. Part of those funds come back to the county and fines to the county. I know that in the Fish and Game Commission, we see those funds come through every once in a while. Is that your understanding?
My understanding is that that is true, but I can tell you that environmental health has not realized any of those funds.
Right. They just come back in a different route.
Where we do get some revenue and it goes into a Coupa trust fund is when there's these statewide enforcement things against, say, a box store or something like that, and it's a statewide enforcement, and then we participate in providing information, and then we get a piece of that, and it goes back to that Coupa trust fund. But that's the only fine money I'm aware of.
Thank you very much for coming over, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate taking time out of your busy day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody here from the district attorney's office? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go back to public comment.
Chairman, I think the building director looks like he has a comment he'd like to make on this.
Okay, I'm going to ask your indulgence to let the building department make a presentation.
Sorry, folks. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I'm familiar with the Madera study and the cost per plant that they placed on it. I feel it's inherently flawed based on the cost per abatement, both civilly and criminally, will vary so greatly based on type of terrain, type of grow. Are there legal issues? Are there criminal issues? So I just wanted to clarify that stamping it costs X amount of dollars per plant to abate is flawed. So I just want to clarify.
Thank you. I think that's why, just to bring that study up is nothing more than to provide a jumping off point for the discussion, and that some counties have tried to find a number, and not that the numbers are valuable, because again, our terrain and our soil conditions, there's a lot of things that play into it, but that we do have to have that conversation somewhere in this total discussion. So I'm not saying that's the final answer. I'm just simply saying, let's look at what that might be and know what it is going into it.
Absolutely, Supervisor Mills. I understand why you're making the point. I just wanted for the greater audience here to understand that a per plant cost would be very, very difficult, if not impossible.
I appreciate your.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Further input by staff? Now we'll go back to public comment.
Hello, Board. Trevor Whitkey, Executive Director of the Calaveras Cannabis Alliance. I was recently appointed as this position last week. So we have a number of policy suggestions we would like to see in any permanent ordinance. First, we recognize that commercial operations must be moved out of residential neighborhoods. We also acknowledge that acreage limits are needed to move commercial operations out of the neighborhoods and onto appropriately sized parcels zoned for the use. This is necessary to get it out of the majority of problem areas that are currently plaguing the urgency ordinance. If we have an ability to get out of the residential neighborhoods, we are going to be able to actually have a workable program where there's a middle ground for all sides to meet up. There will be losses on all sides. The cannabis growers are going to suffer losses. There are people in the community who will be upset about the fact that there's any regulated cannabis. But this is the only way that we can actually meet our budgetary restrictions and have a working cannabis program here in the county. It was very clear. Rebecca Kalin said we need 220 registered farms for the program to be viable. We have further policy prescriptions, including we believe every compliant farm that is forced to relocate and is fully compliant under the urgency ordinance should be allowed a single lateral transfer of their license to an appropriately zoned and sized property. These farms forced to relocate should be allowed at least 1 year to shut down, 3 years to move to an appropriate property. If they have ceased operations during this transition period, they can maintain good standing by paying a placeholder fee while their farm that is currently zoned out is no longer in operation. We believe that allowing multiple permitted farms on a single parcel scaled to the acreage limit will allow for compliant farms to quickly transition to appropriate locations without creating a real estate rush. The state has also released draft regulatory guidelines that allow for multiple permits on a single parcel. I gave all of you the packet last week specifying this particular provision. We support a fixed cap on the number of farms based on the number of operations that are fully compliant with local and state regulations. This would be about 200 to 300 farms at most. We encourage expanding and strengthening existing noise ordinance to toughen restrictions and sanctions on violators in any permanent ordinance. We support regulations prohibiting the use of generators. We support the inclusion of a night sky provision in any permanent ordinance. We also are in favor of provisions requiring proof of legal on-site water source for every farm to address the issue with water trucks. We also support the administration of road impact fees for commercial operations to address increased traffic impacts on county-maintained roads.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to remind everybody, clapping, we've got a lot of folks that want to have their turn at the microphone. I'll buy that, but I'm not going to do the clapping thing. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning, Honorable Board of Supervisors. My name is Patricia Brooks, Special Assistant to Alameda County Board of Supervisor Nate Miley. And from Alameda County, we hail greetings to all of you in Calaveras County.
Thank you.
I rise today and I drive up to this beautiful Calaveras County simply because, as our work on CSAC has shown, and working with rural communities, we all can come together on basic, realistic regulations. And a couple of things, and I'm glad to hear CCA mention this, because for some time now, reasonable regulations have always included non-rural residential. Reasonable regulations have always included Department of Justice background checks. That's a public safety issue. Those are common issues with CSAC. And working with, and I know Supervisor Oliver, hopefully you'll be able to speak about your experience in CSAC. We appreciated having you there. Personally, as I sit on the state cannabis working group and the state track and trace, there's tons of work to be done. But understanding the rural understanding, this is not about tons of money coming into the county. This is really about a way of life for rural residential. And as we sat and listened to 150 people in the room, we heard the cries from rural residential. This is a way of life for Calaverians. We ask, as CSAC members, we ask as board members, that you look at all sides of this argument, understanding that we still have the case out of Riverside. You have every right as Board of Supervisors to actually ban this out of your county. We understand that. We respect that. We look forward to your guidance as to how we can actually have people who are in the rural areas understand that this is the law in the state of California. However, we don't want to encroach on your way of life. How we can do that, we're hoping that our champions who I've been lobbying to help us with the stakeholders group will come together as we do in Alameda County, respectfully understanding the role of the Board of Supervisors and respectfully understanding our planning director, Peter, who's been very helpful to Alameda County. We all are helping on the county levels. We ask that you look out to CSAC. We ask that you look to Alameda County, Yolo County, Sonoma County. We are all here to help. This is a discussion. It starts perhaps today, but it certainly will not be over. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Patricia.
How wonderful it is to be here today. I'd like to thank these fine folks for letting me come up here and speak out of line. I was long gone, and then I accidentally made a phone call to your sheriff here, and he said, why don't you come on down here? I made it from San Francisco. Just a couple days ago, I was on Crissy Field on a 72-degree day, playing with and just having a great time. And here I am again with you people. I just love you people. I really do. I get to see too much of you. What Calaveras needs is just stability. And what we don't have now, and we haven't had for several years now, is that stability. It's affecting businesses, it's affecting development. We need our general plan worked on. We don't need to be distracted by marijuana any longer. Whether you have a regulatory ordinance, which most likely you should probably put on the ballot as a county-sponsored initiative, or if you have a ban, it doesn't matter to people like me. I have a project down in Copperopolis area as well. And yeah, I drug a lot of people up here a few years ago and we invested in quite a few projects. So we would like to get our money out of this out of this beautiful county of yours. This is I consider Calaveras County my home county. I've known the people in every walk of life. Legal marijuana growers, illegal marijuana growers, registered marijuana growers. And I better tell you this. The illegal marijuana growers, I talk to them. They're my neighbors, not direct neighbors, but in town. And they say, listen, we have a less than 5% chance of getting count. We might as well grow. It's the best odds we're going to get. So enforcement's a key here. Whether you have a ban or whether you have regulation, enforcement is the key. Okay? How much more time do I have?
1 minute, 15 seconds.
What do you want to talk about? Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about marijuana. I'm not naive to marijuana. Of course, like most people, I probably tried it once or twice in my youth, and I can remember how it dramatically affected my life one day in the 1990s. This house that you can look at the house on SF Gate. It was featured in the Monday edition of the real estate section as a house that nobody could sell. It's going for $28.5 million, and that's the reason you can't sell it. Well, one day a friend of mine had some marijuana brownies, and they were in the freezer, and I hadn't tried marijuana in years. And that night I had a date with Ashley, who was a girl of the Big Ten in the Playboy magazine. And this was going to be a great day. But then I had the marijuana brownie, and that kind of ruined the evening. So it's had a negative impact on my life. Have a good day, folks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bill Wilson, District 1. I have something for the board. I had asked to do a presentation, but I realized the limitations of public using county equipment that we paid for. We might bring a virus into the network. Anyway, those are actual pictures. I have more, approximately 300 pictures of registered grows. The sheriff and other county staff have been very liberal in their presentations of illegal, unregulated, nasty, environmentally corrupt grows. My wife and I came here 6 years ago after her father died of pancreatic and esophageal cancer. He asked us to grow marijuana for him. We hadn't grown marijuana in years, but we did. We grew it for him. We grow it for other cancer patients, patients with Parkinson's, MS, seizures, patients who have just pain. We make a pain cream. Doesn't get you high. but it does take your pain away wherever you rub it on. My wife and I came here 6 years ago. We bought a house that had black mold in it. We bought a house that had 18 truckloads of garbage that we took to the county dump and paid to get rid of. Used tires. I still, when I walk my 20 acres, have found old tires in the bushes. And I haul them up and I take them to the dump and I pay to get rid of them. We've cleaned that property up. We've made it livable. We've made it our home. We have a view of the Sierras and Yosemite, Half Dome. Not the great iconic view because we're north, we're not south. We love it here. We love our neighbors. Our neighbors appreciate us. We've grown marijuana since we came here. When we bought our property, we asked planning, we asked building, we asked Sheriff Kuntz what we needed to do to grow marijuana here in Calaveras County. We were told. We've tried to abide by those rules. We've registered. We are compliant. She has the license. All we ask is to continue to try to provide medicine for sick people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Julio Guerra, and a resident of West Point now. A few years ago, when I was general manager at the Murphy Sanitary District, the Calaveras Board of Supervisors helped us out, spearheaded by Marita Callaway, and helping us get rid of 10 years' worth of domestic sewage sludge. So I'd just like to thank you guys for that in the past. Regarding the issue at hand, I looked at the EI, draft EIR, I looked at the ordinance, and I wonder why you would require an internal grow for medical purposes when that is definitely not the most ecologically sound way to proceed on that matter. And also, I would like to endorse an earlier comment that said, why can't you approach this in a district by district fashion where, you know, the concerns of the neighbors can be seriously addressed, and the concerns of the growers also, and their potential contributions to the county as well. And the one final thing I would like to say is that in wastewater, I was a grade 4 environmental compliance inspector for over 30 years, and I can assure you that regulation is the way to go. You have a sewer system, you put all the sewage in a pipe so you can treat it, and so it doesn't spill out where it's not supposed to go. And and I would like to endorse a system of regulation of cannabis growing to better serve the county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Robert Schufelt. There's not just two choices. It's not ban versus regulate. There's ban, there's regulate, then there's liberty. You know, those are the two. A ban and pure liberty aren't going to work. Neither of those are going to work. If we have a fully free market, the market might react and change things. But if we don't have any regulations, we're either we're trying to ban it, or we're going with do whatever. This is Calaveras County, the land of liberty. Neither a ban or that will work. You have to go the middle path, which is regulation. And it's going to take time, and it's, I'm not, I'm a young man. My parents used to be bandsters. If they lived here, they would have been bandsters at one point, and they would have been totally against any of this stuff. But the history is marching. Like, it's, everyone's opinions on this have changed, probably even people who are completely against commercial activity in the county. They at least now probably acknowledge that there's a need for personal use for like individuals with medical needs or what have you, or as the state says now, if you just want to do it. And I bet you 20 years ago, some of the people that accept that but don't accept cultivation or anything else wouldn't have accepted personal use or medical use. There's a clear trajectory of history or reality. It's that we need to regulate it, we need to accept it, and if no one, we got to get along. There's going to be bandsters living with people that think it should be illegal because that is more profitable. That's our county. We have a diverse county with a lot of different people in it, and and the whole thing with the district lines too. I live in one district, I work in another. I know tons of wineries pulling in cash money in Murphy's every day. Their production's down in Angels or down in Copper. We can't just think about our own districts. Those lines are imaginary. The reality is outside, and that is our entire county that is here together. And we can't walk away from the table. If my parents had disowned me, that'd be sad. But now they're advocates for commercial marijuana. And they're not advocates, but they're cool with it. It's because it was a process. We got through it together, and we're a family in Calaveras, and we need to all get through it together. And we can't, to quote someone, we can't take our ball and go home, because we're all on our own court. We all live here. It's all our ball, and that's getting it right. We got to get it right, and it needs to be out of these neighborhoods. It needs to, it probably needs to be way stricter in certain areas. Maybe it needs to be loosened up in others, but we need to talk about it, and we can't go with no rules, and we can't go with a ban, because those won't work. The middle path is regulate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're going to interrupt the public comment right now. I understand DA, District Attorney Yilkes responded to our request. Thank you very much for coming, Barbara.
Thank you. I apologize for the delay. I was watching the board meeting from my office, trying to get some work done, and after the third subtle hint from the chair, I decided it was time to come down. I was also trying to get some numbers together. I do apologize for not having a formal presentation. I was not asked to present one, and I can certainly do so and try to put something together with some finer details if you wish. Perhaps for the budget hearings, I could try to do that, or we could do it at a different date. So let me know what your
that would
preference is.
probably be appropriate.
Okay. And I can invite my environmental prosecutor down. So I think you may have some questions directly for her. With respect to how it works with the CDAA and the environmental prosecutor, that is a program that is run out of CDAA, the California District Attorneys Association. It's a special environmental circuit prosecutor program. So this is an attorney out of Sacramento that I have deputized to do our environmental cases. I share her with 7 other counties. We have been shamelessly monopolizing her time over the last year to give her expertise and her assistance with any environmental cases from commercial cannabis. What she's been able to do is she's come for trainings, she's come for the meetings, she's come for the environmental task force meetings, which are the meetings that are held with environmental health and some of our local departments, and that's actually a multi-county task force. She's handled the approximately 28 referrals from CAL FIRE for the timber harvesting cases. This is taking trees without permits for a commercial purpose. It's converting those trees for a commercial purpose without the required paperwork. So these are cases that CAL FIRE worked up, and they worked up in isolation, which was somewhat unfortunate, but that's how it's gone this last year. I'm hopeful that this year coming up, it won't be so fragmented, and we will have CAL FIRE with some environmental cases, with some water cases, and if you're having that, you are also having unfair business practices, so that we can have a wider breadth of actions and causes of actions for people who are cheating the system. But for this last year, we've been limited to just pursuing the CAL FIRE cases, the timber harvesting cases. We had 28 referred to my environmental prosecutor. A number of those have settled. Some of them were outside the statute of limitations due to the rules that apply to the taking of the trees. And many of those are proceeding administratively at this point because they're outside the statute of limitations for a criminal case or for a civil action. The cases that we did pursue, many of them have settled civilly, and we have gotten the settlement checks for them. The distribution of those funds is determined by statute, and it's very specific. It is, and it depends on the type of charge. It depends on the type of violation that we are able to allege and prove, and ultimately, if the case settles, how it is settled. Okay? And so the distribution of funds is going to depend on what the violation is, what we can prove, what's been agreed to. Are we going criminally? Are we going civilly? How are we resolving the case? So for all those specifics, there's not one easy answer as to where the fines and penalties go. It really depends. And I hate to give you the lawyer answer, but it depends. It depends on what's happened. I do want to let you know that this has taken approximately 180 hours of deputy DA time, over 40 hours of paralegal time to the program. That doesn't include the time that dribbles down to my office for these cases, because certainly my staff does help out with the filing, with some of the paperwork, and we're not counting those hours. And this is time that is free to the county, because it's free to my office. We're not reimbursing CDAA for that time. It's part of this program that we take advantage of. And like I said, we've been monopolizing a lot of the deputy DA's time. This is a program that I've chosen to be involved in because we do not have these expertise and these resources in-house. I don't have an environmental prosecutor on staff. Some of the larger counties have their own, and they don't use this program, but we use it because we have to, and it's a good program. So, but it is a shared resource, and I'm actually not sure how much longer we're going to be able to monopolize their time. And this is why for over a year I've been asking to beef up our resources in my office so that we can pursue these cases. And certainly my wish would be to pursue them with the wider range of actions that are available if we have the resources to go for them, if the sheriff's office has the resources to pursue these other angles. For instance, tax evasion, workers' comp, the broader environmental crimes, all these other actions that there's already laws on the books for. We just need to be able to pursue them. So I was concerned because of the amount of time that if we had to take these in-house just to do the CAL FIRE cases, 180 hours of prosecutor time plus 40 hours plus of paralegal time. So that is very clear. That is not something that we could have taken on. That is just the CAL FIRE cases. Okay, these are the ones that CAL FIRE kind of stumbled on, not with any cohesive approach. Do I think they could have been broader? Do I think there could have been other angles? I absolutely do think so, because if someone is taking trees and not doing it the right way, there's probably some environmental violations as well, possibly some stream bed issues. Certainly, they're not filing their paperwork. They're shaving off fees to increase their profits. They're engaging in unfair business practices. They're probably not paying all the taxes on it. So, one thing flows to the other, and those are all actions that we have not been able to pursue. As far as straight-up criminal cases, it started off as felonies and then were reduced to misdemeanors after Prop 64. We had 31 of those filed. They're done or they're pending. We've got one out on arrest warrant. We have another 38 cases that appear to be best pursued as straight-up urgency ordinance cases. I've had conversations with county council about cross-deputizing Ethan to possibly handle those. I do expect those to be litigation heavy because there will be litigation on the urgency ordinance itself. What we find also is that when we are talking about these type of actions, a lot of times the defendants will have private attorneys, and they can be litigation heavy because it's not just about the penalty, it is about the constitutionality of the statute and of the action. So I'm not exactly positive where we're going to go next, what next steps we're going to take on that group of cases, because Ethan, he's just too busy with the administrative abatements and everything else that he's got going on. So, you know, at this point, I'm an attorney down, and so we're just going to have to see what the next step is. We still have time on the statute of limitations, so don't worry, they're not going by the wayside. We are still considering those. And I want to remind you that I think the sheriff spoke on how many search warrants they've done. My office works very closely with the sheriff's office on those search warrants. We review them. Due to my staffing and shifts in staffing, I don't have the luxury of a dedicated person to attach to the marijuana enforcement team. With this area and with all the changes in this area of the law, that would be the best thing, to have an attorney attached to the marijuana enforcement team, someone who is embedded, someone who can work very closely, and be accessible at all times. The way it is right now, unfortunately, for his deputies that are working on these search warrants, it's if I've got an attorney available. It tends to be 2 or 3 different attorneys in my office, myself and 2 others that have had a lot of experience in narcotics and search warrant review, but it's who they get, and it's not always consistent in who they get next time when they're coming, maybe with the second draft of that search warrant where facts change. So that's not the most efficient way to go, because then you have more people having to get up to speed on it instead of one person who's rolling with it and can be advising as things happen. So we're making it work, we are doing it, and I just wanted to make sure that that didn't get overlooked, that when the sheriff talks about search warrants, my office is also involved in that, and we've just been absorbing that aspect of it, and we're doing the best we can. I would like to do it more efficiently, if at all possible. I think I addressed the specific questions. If you had others, like I said, I'd be happy to prepare a more formal presentation if that would be helpful, and perhaps invite my circuit prosecutor here to talk about some of the more specific drill down on the fines and penalties. I would like to caution you, however, that while I'm willing to provide that information, when we're talking about cases that my office is pursuing, we cannot look at the revenue. You know, we cannot look at what we do as a way to generate revenue, and I'm cognizant of the fact that that's important to Mr. Lutz during our budget meeting last Friday. I explained to him in how I put it in the most easy way for me, I think, to put it, is that we're not pirates. We can't look at cases about trying to get revenue and exact revenue in order to increase our coffers. Now, if that's something that does flow to the county, so be it. But we are driven by our duty to seek justice. We never look at cases and what we do as a source of revenue and how can we make money, how can we recoup costs. Once we start doing that, you know, we've lost all our ethics, and that's not something that we're willing to do. So I can have those discussions with you, but I want to caution you that that would be our approach. We're not looking for revenue, and I'm certainly not going to start now. That's not how we do things.
Thank you for not being prepared to make a presentation.
Oh, I have a
Excellent
PowerPoint with all
job.
kinds of moving pieces.
I believe Supervisor Mills, you were first with your light?
It goes by order of light on.
I guess so.
Does the light on mean a question?
Lights on.
Okay.
Do you feel that a forensic financial analyst would be of some value to your department as a position, either full or part-time, going into the next budget cycle?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And could you explain to us exactly what that value would represent? Again, I'm asking a loaded question because you and I already had this conversation, but I wanted to have some clarity on that value and what that really brings to the table.
Okay, for the purposes of the cannabis discussion, somebody who has the ability to follow the money, to figure out where the money's coming from, where is it going, are taxes being paid, is a very valuable tool in addressing and holding an industry accountable, whichever way you go. I think the position is important, and it's a way to deal with what the county is facing, whether there is very strict regulation to it, a ban, or loose regulation, or a carte blanche. Either way, this is a way to hold the actors accountable, hold anybody accountable who is trying to cheat the system, whatever system is in place. It is a money-making industry. It's a cash-based industry, and the only way you can hold someone accountable is to follow the money. And you can't do that with routine investigation. So the investigation that a forensic accountant can engage in is somebody who can follow the money, who can go after bank records, purchase records, and just really follow where it's going. And if someone is not able to say, well, you know, you have all these assets, this cost this amount of money, how did you purchase it, where did that money come from? Then you can build a case around that, whether it be an unfair business practices case, whether it ultimately ends up in tax evasion type of case, whether it ends up in something that we could put together as far as maybe an asset forfeiture case, a totally different type of civil action that we have not discussed yet. So any of those type of actions require a financial investigation, and that is not something that any of our agencies right now have the capacity to conduct. We just don't. We don't have that expertise. We don't have those personnel. We don't have the right people in the right places. And I know that the sheriff has recommended the position or supporting the position be in my office. I actually have no problem if it's in the sheriff's office. You know, it could be maybe in Barbara Sullivan's office. It's something that the county needs in place in order to not have just a very limited type of approach that we can handle. For instance, I draw back to what I told you about the Cal Fire cases. One slice. Was there much more going on? Absolutely. But we didn't have the right tools. We didn't have the right foundation to take this multi-faceted approach. And I think that is one of the missing pieces. I would say, however, that I'm not interested in setting up anyone for failure. So if you went down this road of supporting a forensic accountant for my office, the sheriff's office, whoever, that's great. But we need to be able to take that next step. Otherwise, you're setting up that position for failure. So, you know, so for the past year, my request has been for, you know, this kind of unit. A marijuana crimes unit, cannabis crimes unit, and I think through my discussions with Mr. Lutz, he said something that really resonated and made me think, okay, that is a way, that might be a better way to look at it. A consumer protection type agency, a consumer protection group, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about protecting the consumers, protecting the public from this new business, legal or not. So, you know, if you think about that, you should have all these different pieces. You know, we can take one tiny little piece. That's fine. We can keep going after this one tiny little piece, the Cal Fire cases, the timber cases. But we're missing out, and we're not having much of an impact. So, you know, that's why my request has been to invest in a way to handle what we have before us. And so it has to be all of it. You know, would I be happy if you just said, okay, you can have this one piece? You know, 50-50, because, like I said, I don't want to set up anybody for failure, and I would be worried that that's what would be happening. For instance, if you gave me an attorney just to do these cases, okay, that's great, but we don't have these other pieces, so we're going to be limited in what we can do, if that makes sense. All right.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Thank you very much. Madam District Attorney, I think we all agree public safety is paramount, and thank you for your work. I had a couple quick questions, though, since we were talking about environmental impacts and CAL FIRE cases. What is the statute of limitations for a violation like this?
It depends on the charge, and it depends on, some of the charges depend on the date of discovery compared to the date of the act, and that's where we had some issues with the recent group of CAL FIRE cases. So it will depend, and I can, when I come back, I can give you the rundown on those if you wish. I do have a breakdown on some of the charges if you are interested. The penalties, 30%, I'm sorry.
Actually, that wasn't my next question.
Okay.
Of the 28 violations, how many of those were on legal and how many of those were on illegal cannabis sites?
You know, I don't have that breakdown. I think they were mixed. Some were on grows that had put in their paperwork. I can't say if any of them were on grows that had been issued the permits by that time.
Because I think that would be an important thing for us to know as we think about alternatives. You know, where are environmental violations happening? Certainly, we all want to protect our environment. We appreciate the hard work that CAL FIRE does, your partnership with them.
So you want to know,
I want to know of the 28, how many were done on grows that had applications in pending, how many were done on applications complete, and how many were just out and out illegal grows?
okay.
Thank you. That's all I got.
And really quickly, I know there's no question pending, but for certain of the fines and fees, 30% are distributed to the county, which first have to be used to reimburse my office for any investigation or prosecution. 30% go to the investigating agency, and 40% to Timber Regulation and Forest Restoration Fund, used for grants to remediate the effects of the grows. So that's for certain of it. Just to give you an example of the statutory breakdown.
Barbara, before you walk away, can you give us any idea of what the costs are going to be? You said that there are 38 UO cases?
Pending right now.
There's a 28?
38, no, 38. 38 pending with my office right now.
What general costs is it going to be, and who's going to pay the costs to prosecute those cases? I mean, it depends on the charges.
If they stay in my office,
Yes.
it would just be my office and my staff. General fund.
General fund? Okay. And then if there's fines levied, of course, that would come back to what, your office?
You know, I don't actually know because we're talking about taking criminal cases to court.
Right.
So I have not looked at what the formula breakdown is for any fines and fees that go to the court. Are there any that come back to the county?
Could you bring that back to us in the next meeting? Thank you.
And I don't know. I don't know if there are any that would come back to the county.
Supervisor Tofinelli?
Yes, Barbara, do we have any idea what the total number of acres or trees are that we're talking on the 38 violations?
I do not have that in front of me. Oh, for the CAL FIRE cases, 28,
Yeah.
the 28?
20 acres is
Okay.
what it was.
Okay.
And during the course of the prosecution or the outcome, are they required to restore the
Yes.
properties? They are.
Yes.
So that's part of.
That's part of the settlement. These were all taken civilly.
Okay.
We did not pursue any of these criminally.
Thank you.
And many times that's a better way to go. That's a better way to go in most of these cases, to go civilly instead of criminally. And then, as I said, even those that we cannot pursue civilly, they've been referred back to the agency for whatever administrative processes they might have available to them.
Thank you, District Attorney Hill, for coming over on such short notice and providing an excellent presentation without preparing. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to resume public comment, and we'll be breaking at 12:30 for lunch for an hour and a half. Give a chance for our staff to get a little refresher lunch and get things going. So, our next speaker, excuse me, sir. Get everybody's attention. Folks, can we proceed? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bill Lent, and I'm a resident of Arnold. And I'm neither a grower or a consumer, so I don't really have a dog in this fight. But what I wanted to talk about, and I came here because I watched your meeting last time and saw Supervisor Tofinelli have a concern about regulation and wanted to discuss that. And that's what I am. I'm actually 30 years I was a regulator, manager of a large, complex, urban regulatory program, namely San Mateo County. And so I did the same thing your CUPA does here, and I had a district attorney, a prosecutor, I had a DA investigator. We did a lot of environmental regulation. I was also a responder for 30 years, so I was a hazmat guy. I saw a lot of calls, and I'm a chemist. My degree's in chemistry, so I have some technical expertise. I'm a trainer. I'm a certified state trainer. I was the statewide training coordinator for the California CUPA Forum for 15 years. So I know a lot about inspection and regulation. And I just completed, in fact, I'm probably going to, I just completed a contract with Calaveras County to provide some consulting services, and I got to take a look at your cannabis growing operations. And I'm probably going to give a flip side to the sheriff's presentation, because I saw the environmental impact, and I saw the illegal grows and what they can do, and that's got to be eradicated. Now, the grows that I went out on, I went out probably about 100 grows, a little short of that. And I saw a new industry that wanted to be regulated, that thought that this would validate them, and they were eager to comply. It's not complicated to regulate them. It's fairly easy. I could see there was a concern with the lack of results and the lack of inspections that were done at the last one, at the last meeting. From my perspective, you know, if you have a large fire that affected your staff, and then you had this whole tidal wave of applications that came in, and you have 700 applicants, and you still have the same number of staff, it's very hard for them to process that. And so, pardon me? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Okay, so what I wanted to say is that it can be done. You probably would need to have an assessment done. I heard comments about the staff being not getting their work done. I have to say that the staff that I work with at Calaveras County was of the highest caliber. And they were great people, hardworking people. You don't have an employee problem, you have a retention problem. As far as, that's it?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next speaker?
Bill McManus. I think we need to step back a little bit and see where we've been, where we started, where we're at, where we're going. A couple of years ago, Mr. Oliveira was the sole surviving member of a board that, when faced with this problem, voted 5-0 to do nothing. Shortly after that, we started proposing a ban, which went nowhere. The compromise position was the urgency ordinance, which has proven to be an abysmal failure. As recently as January 31st, and I have some time stamps for comments that were made, the board had clearly expressed its will to ban all commercial cultivation. Every single supervisor who voted in the polls and in the vote has been consistent. Mr. Tofinelli, Mr. Mills, and Mr. Clapp saying things like, we need to do it now, we need to get this thing moving. When's it going to be done? Where are we going with it? Please report back. We want it by certain dates, so forth and so on. I can give you a copy of the metered comments that came from that meeting. What disturbs me is the board has expressed its preference. Its will is known. 3 members have voted repeatedly to take a course of action. 2 members of the board find themselves in the minority. Well, I'm sorry for that. 3 votes rules on a board of 5. The 2 people who are in the minority someday may be in a majority on other items, maybe general plan, budget, who knows. But it's unethical for those 2 that are in the minority to try to undermine the will of the board, the majority of the board that is speaking. And when I say undermine, I'd like to know who is entertaining an alternative plan. This board has never, ever, in any of its discussions, said, yeah, let's have 2 parallel ordinances coming forward. It's always been the ban. So someone along the line is trying to inject items into this process that are contrary to the will of the board. The urgency ordinance, like I say, has been an abysmal failure. Regulation is an abysmal failure. If you only have 100 applications approved after this long, how can you say that regulation can work? 30 seconds. It can't. What you have is regulation without enforcement. That is chaos. You move forward with another plan that's considered a compromise, it's going to be no different than the urgency ordinance. It's a grow and regulate. We've seen that there's no problem growing, but there's a huge problem regulating. and getting it done. So I would ask the board to go along with their decisions so far, stick by their guns, and keep
Thank
going
you, Mr.
towards a ban.
Manis. Time is up.
All right, thank you.
Did you say we were going to continue with who's up there?
When we get back from lunch, if we go to 12:30, we'll
Thank you,
continue with public comment, sir.
Members of the board of directors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike Gonsman. I'm a resident of District 1, Calaveras County at this time, but I've been here for 30 years, so it used to be District 5. Nevertheless, in thinking about what's going on, and excuse me for having to read this, but I prepared this just slightly before I got here this morning, and so I'm going to read it. In thinking about what's going on in our county, one can't help but think about two previous times in our history, events or things or events that happened that are comparable to what's going on now with our marijuana movement. Those things would be the gold rush of 1849 and the lottery of sometime around 40 years ago. The thing that makes this comparable with our issue of marijuana today is that all three are basically the possibility of one to get rich quickly opportunity. All three take a relatively small investment for the most part for huge financial returns that are possible. In the case of the gold rush and industry and also the marijuana industry, the environmental issues are huge. As our sheriff said this morning, this is just another example, and that's just one example. This stuff's going on all over the place. Even the legal growers have admitted that they wish that the University of Davis would come up with some chemicals that were satisfiable to the state of California, but they're not going to do it. Why would they want to cooperate with them? That's not their business. Nevertheless, it just, and the other thing is regulations. The last Board of Supervisors meeting, there was 2 or 3 people that got up and said, growers, that said, I don't care if you guys ban it or not, we're not leaving. Well, you might say, well, that was because they were illegal, but I didn't see any legal growers get up and say, I disagree with that, gentlemen. We follow the law. Gentlemen, they do not follow the law. The majority of the supervisors in this county have asked the people, have asked the supervisors, and the people of this county have repeatedly said that they want a complete ban. 30 seconds. I demand that the Board of Supervisors force the planning department to produce a ban now. And for anybody that's in this county that's appointed, and not elected, but appointed, that is not following the direction of this county's people and the Board of Supervisors, be fired. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Eric Williams. I have a homestead and registered cannabis farm in West Point. I have a few suggestions on alternatives to a ban. So for the people complaining about commercial in residential neighborhoods, one solution would be to increase the acres that are needed to grow in residential zoning. A second solution would be to decrease the percentage of the land that can be used for cannabis cultivation. In the UO, it's 15%, so you could lower that, and that would force the farms to be a little smaller in those areas. You can increase the setbacks in residential zoning, and you can also limit the size of the farms in residential zoning, so you cannot allow big farms. Another complaint is on light pollution on the night sky, and the solution is to enforce new state guidelines that say from sunset to sunrise, any lights on a cannabis farm have to be shielded from the night sky. Third major complaint is on generator noise. And again, you can follow the same new state guidelines. They're not going to be allowing any generator use. It's only going to be allowed for emergencies or temporary usage. And so if somebody has a power outage and they need to use a generator, they would be able to, but using a generator for pumping water each day, daily use of generators, will no longer be allowed by the state starting next year. Another complaint is on increased wear and tear on the roads, and a solution would be to charge a road fee on the cannabis farms. And the final complaint I hear a lot is a lot of people don't want Calaveras to become Cannabis County, and a solution to that is to allow no new grows. And so just from the pool that we have of compliant registered growers, allow them to move forward and don't allow any new growth in the industry. And finally, I would ask that whatever the board does change, if it decides to go with regulation, that if a farm is currently compliant and currently legal, but becomes uncompliant from your changes, that you would allow them to move properties to a compliant area. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the board, my name is Reed Larson. I'm a cannabis cultivation registrant and property owner in Mountain Ranch. Today I want to talk about compromise. I hold an opinion often seen as unpopular amongst my constituents. I would begrudgingly welcome further restrictions on cultivation as long as regulations allowed for the cannabis industry to operate here. I would cede my rural residential cannabis cultivation registration in exchange for the ability to take my good name elsewhere and operate on a more appropriately zoned and sized property. I would be willing to set aside my pride and continue to invest in our wonderful county under a wide array of compromises. If there is a ban, I'll have to leave. I will have to consider selling my properties and starting anew. I will take my business, my education, and my skills elsewhere. I'm open to compromise, but this industry must remain. At the end of the day, I need a job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Joan Wilson, District 1. A lot of good things have been said here, and I agree with a lot of them. Some of them I don't agree with. A few points that I'd like to bring up is there was one concern about farms being in small areas. The state recognizes small businesses or small farmers. They're called cottage grows. And perhaps something like, maybe somebody on 2 acres may still want to grow something, maybe not 22,000 square feet, maybe something smaller. So perhaps the percentage of the garden could coincide with the what the size of the land. Maybe something up to 20 acres or more could handle 22,000 square feet. There's several 22,000 square feet gardens in my area. They go unnoticed. Another thing was trucks and roads. I would suggest attach the fee to the truck and the load, not to the farmer. There are other farms in this county that does not have to pay a fee for that. And there are farms in this county, such as myself, that don't use trucks and heavy loads. I have a small farm. So I think it should be attached to the truck and to the load. There are other entities, such as construction businesses, cattle businesses, many other businesses that use heavy trucks and heavy loads. And I think they should share in that bill. Give the sheriff the ability to get rid of these bad people and these illegal grows. Please don't tie his hands. The man has a big enough job as it is, and we want to help fund that. There was also something about taxes. There are about $7 million more that is going to come into this county on those taxes. So hopefully we won't end up with a deficit. There was limiting to the number of farms. Of what size? Are they only going to limit 250 farms of 3,000 square feet? Or what? There does need to be new grows. People are going to die, and we don't want farms to die along with them. Mills pointed out that the cost to clean up suggests a new EIR specifically for a ban, and put it on the ballot. If you gentlemen come up with regulation, I think the people need to have a say. There were several people that say that their vote was taken away. And as far as if you do decide to ban, I will follow the law. I always have. I've only grown legally. I will grow the biggest 6 plants I can. Thank you.
Good morning.
Afternoon. Prapana Randall Smith, District 3 voter and cannabis cultivator. I'm here to rise to the occasion, thanks to Mr. Tofinelli asking growers to stand up and say what they're for. And I'm speaking exclusively on behalf of my business, Magic Show LLC. What we want to see in a permanent regulatory cannabis ordinance. 1, we want to remain here and be responsible citizens and business people with a locally licensed cannabis business. 2, we want our neighbors to feel safe through effective and timely enforcement of state and local regulations, as well as those pertaining to land use, including limits on rural residential. We want to be among the first to apply for state licensure beginning on January 1, 2018. We want to apply for and obtain a local license this year for, initially, a specialty indoor cannabis cultivation license for up to 5,000 square feet of canopy, that is a license 1A, and then expand over time to a small indoor license of up to 10,000 square feet, which is license 2A. We'd also like to apply for a manufacturing license, 6 or 7, as these are the only other types of licenses that cultivators may obtain as per state law. 5, we want to be able to take our products to up to 2 or 3 locally state licensed cannabis testing labs as required by state law. 6, we want to be able to hire locally and state licensed transporters as required by state law. We want to be able to take our product to up to 3 locally and state licensed distributors. 8, we want to pay our fair share of taxes and see that the money benefit all Calaveras County communities, particularly with regards to public safety, public health and welfare, infrastructure, parks and recreation, libraries are not here, we'll throw those in as well, comprehensive eradication of unpermitted cannabis operations, county staff, including wage and benefit increases, and any other expenditures the Board of Supervisors deems appropriate for the county. 9, we want to see our colleagues who are presently licensed on RR properties be afforded the opportunity to either rezone their property or move to another property that is zoned for cannabis businesses and be given sufficient time to make said move. Thank you. 10, we want the Board of Supervisors to take the lead on this issue by enacting comprehensive regulatory cannabis control ordinance as permitted by state law. I'd also like to add that we strongly support or urge the Board of Supervisors to consider the appropriateness of a new cannabis control agency to enforce the county code pertaining to all cannabis activities. And the basic idea is the 5 paid commissioners would work with a department headed by a director, and I'd like to suggest that commissioners be required to spend at least 75% of their paid hours out in the field, getting to know the industry, so that, at least for the first few years, so that every single cannabis business will be visited by and known to county officials. The remaining 25%
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
on other
3
activities.
minutes are up.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Holly Johnston. I'm from District 3. I have a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Policy. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I don't have a song this time. What I do have are many suggestions for regulation. Many things are already in the emergency ordinance that I agree with. I think it's a good structure to start with. The following are suggestions for some possible improvements. I think that the county could offer a class on proper pesticide and fertilizer application that is free or at least affordable to cannabis growers. This will help decrease improper use of fertilizers and pesticides. These classes could be offered several times in a year, so it's easy for growers to attend. Money perhaps could come from registration fees or taxes. As far as unregistered growers goes, make it possible for people who haven't registered to register. If they can't register and want to grow, they will just do it illegally. Give them a chance to do it legally, or the county will be spending more tax money to shut down grows of people who would likely be willing to sign up and pay taxes if incentivized and able. If you're worried about people moving here for the weed boom, well, it's happening anyway, but perhaps give further registration priority to people who've lived here for a certain span of time, like a year or 2 years. Support local. Ensure that our county's cannabis production stays in local hands. Roughly 5 years down the road, California will allow large multinational for-profit corporations to move in on the industry. Please don't let that happen here. Preemptively ensure that companies such as Philip Morris don't buy out local farms. You think you have issues with cannabis now. If Philip Morris were growing wheat in our county, we'd have much bigger problems, and there would be little to no accountability for companies such as that. Locals care far more about their community environment than any out-of-state company possibly could. Dispensaries. They shouldn't be harder to put in than a pharmacy or wine retail store. They are necessary if we want to keep more of the money from the cannabis produced in our county within the county. Recreationally, they're a boon to tourism. Medically, they're a necessity for patients. Taxing. Tax based on dry weight of final product, not on canopy size. Taxing canopy size makes little sense. In a bad year, it punishes people who have already had enough troubles as they have suffered losses to their businesses. This is farming, and losses can be severe. In a good year, a canopy tax is not proportional to the amount grown. It also forces growers to use their entire registered area, whether or not they're prepared to do so. Thank you. I will skip ahead. Once the regulations are in place, don't be too harsh on small growers hiding in the bushes still. They are getting used to the idea of legalization and in time will likely want it for themselves. Focus on the excessively large illegal grows that are harming the local environment. Particularly focus on those growing on public lands. They are the real problem. Smaller growers will come around and register if they have the chance and see that it's actually worthwhile and safe for them to do so. Don't vacillate. Part of why people hide in the bushes is that they're afraid their names will be put on a list for regulation and then it will be banned again. And this dream of legalization that we've longed for decades will be gone and then their names are on a list. Thank you very much, and don't ban the herb in our county.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have this last speaker before lunch.
James Walker again, Murphy's, Mr. Oliveira's district. Every time I've watched these things, and I get to be here this time, I hear the UO's not working, the UO's not working. 80 years, sheriffs before him, they were a ban. They had full, reign to criminalize and to put people behind bars. 80 years, and it did not work. It didn't. A ban is no different than a non-criminalized approach with no money. Our sheriff's department we need to have people everywhere. He has to have the best equipment, he has to have the best staff, he has to have, it has to be done. Regulation is the only way. Prohibition never worked. I knew an old cop in North Carolina who was there for Prohibition, who used to work it. And he told me that it was the same as sending a single officer in a slicker with a coffee cup underneath Niagara Falls, telling him, stop that flow, and if you have any spare time, pick up what got past you. And he told me that if you continued to add officers, they're still never, ever going to stop that flow. 19 years they did it with booze, and it never worked. 80 years we've done it with cannabis, and it has never worked. Bans don't work. Bans make the problem worse. You tell Americans and human beings they can't have something, they want it. You give it to them, they lose interest pretty quick. Our teens don't care about pot, really. If you talk to your teens in this county and our young adults, they don't care. It is the same as a ham radio set to them as far as drugs. It's the old way. These guys are beer bonging whiskey. These guys are looking for extracts from human pineal glands to get, it's horrible. And we've got our sheriff tied up in this cannabis thing. I worked California Department of Forestry when I was younger. I worked out Altaville on a 5-man strike team. First fire I responded to, working CDF, was a crank lab on fire. And all my Nomex and new issued, it all had to be burned. I went to hand-me-downs for the rest of the season. Those are problems. These chemicals, illegal grows. I heard the environmental person say, we haven't issued anything to these registered guys. They're trying to be compliant. We haven't found problems. I've seen some of these grows, kelp and blackstrap molasses. I see more running out of our parking lots into our watershed, in front of our grocery stores from vehicles, than I see dangerous substances on the commercial grows.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that'll be our last speaker before lunch. We'll return at 2 o'clock.